This is the second of 2 harmoniums that are being donated. So, anyways, so this is a basic dust cover that I made. This particular harmonium had a lot of problems with it. I got it for a dirt cheap price off Craigslist, and it's almost like a second quality one. It had so many problems with it, which I'll go over. The stops, put little labels on here. This one was a drone. It was a side-mounted drone, and I took that reed out to use for something else. Nobody really uses the drones that much anyway, so you're not really losing much. But try to keep that in, otherwise you're going to have it's leaking air if you pull it out. I did put a piece of duct tape to kind of seal it a little bit, but you'll notice lower performance when you're pumping the bellows if that's out. So you can take that off or leave that. That's just a regular label. This is the tremolo one. It's just an extra stop. I would go ahead and leave it in and just only pull out those. And you're going to notice that even with the stops in, it leaks a little bit of air if you were to place the notes, because the high reeds, for this one, the outer ones, the blocks don't go all the way over the holes. And I'd have to make a whole bigger piece of wood to go in there, and it's not really that important, so I didn't fix that part of it. Also, it's missing the divider on one half. And there's some pinch points. When you go to grab it, put it all the way up and then grab it, because if it's partially up and you go to grab it, you might get your finger caught. Okay, so this is side bellows open there. Make sure the stops are out. You can remove the glass if you want to, just for a louder volume. I did put some tabs on there because it was resting right on the little springs. It was making a lot of noise. So that was one thing I added. I did tune it. It was a lot of the reeds were corroded, so I took all the reeds off, which I normally don't do, and cleaned them all off, and they were all almost a quarter step sharp. So I did take the time to sound them. The only problem you find is that the higher reeds up here are not, the highest ones are not sounding, because one of the highest reeds on the second set is a little, the edge of it's missing, so there's too much air passing through, and there's also not enough air going through, but it's missing the divider, so you're not going to be able to separate the reeds anyways. When I tuned them, I had to put some masking tape on one set. And this particular harmonium also had some problems with slow sounding reeds, which you have to bend them up or down usually. They were just really finicky. It just took a long time to get that cleared up. And there still might be a slow sounding high reed or one here and there. But otherwise oh yeah, I took out the lock that was in here because it was actually hitting this key. There's also a split right about the E note. And even some of the reeds that were buzzing is because there was just wood debris in the holes. I treated all the keys. If you watch the other video where I cleared them all out, they were all pretty loose as it was. There was a couple sticking keys, but the one that was sticking here was because of the lock. So I took that out, filled that in with wood. What else? Spring tension is a little bit lighter than the other ones, but it's probably about average. I filled the crack by cutting it out with making it a little bit larger with the X-Acto knife, and then filling it in with maple veneer. Another thing I did was the bellows, the internal bellows. This is the external bellows. The internal bellows was I replaced the nails with some screws and I countersunk those. That's really easy to adjust the springs because they're not attached on the bottom, but they were too loose. There wasn't that much tension on when I was trying to play before, so that's why those can be adjusted. And putting the screws on the bottom just makes it easier to adjust in the future because you might need to strengthen or weaken it. The hinges on the reed board were missing screws. I took off the sticker. Well, first of all, I put these little felt pads on here just because it still makes kind of clanking thing. To remove the lock face that was on here because it was a little tab that used to get inserted right into the top of the lock there, and it was always getting bent up and it never really sat right. And also this was sitting up too high. The wood was too thick and the hinges were not right. So I first just chiseled out the wood to get the seat further, but I ended up having to plane this down, take this off and plane the wood shorter so that it actually sits flush when you put it in. And you might be tempted to grab it by the sides for this cover, but that will break because I had to remake these. When I first got it, they were broken, so I had to completely make this, and it's really that was a real pain to fix these. So try not to grab that from the cover because it actually just slides onto this little corner brace here. The corner braces overhang just a little bit, slides in, and that's going to get loose over time. So if it does, I would probably just get a piece of self-stick felt and stick it right inside there, something just to tighten it up. But otherwise, when you're putting it away after you've closed up the bellows and all that stuff, just kind of jimmy it forward, pull this back, and I added 2 screws and 2 holes to take place of the brace that was there, and jimmy that, and otherwise it sits nice and flat. And I took the sticker off. There's a very tacky sticker of Saraswati. Like glittery type sticker. You'll still see the imprint from the faded stain, whatnot, but I went ahead and clear coated it, a couple of heavy coats of spray paint. I didn't sand or buff it or anything like that, but otherwise this fits much nicer than it originally was. It was, like I said, it was originally sticking up like that, and the back braces were broken on it. So try not, if someone else is using it, make sure they use the handles. Don't grab it by the cover because that will break off. When I ship it out to you, I'm going to have this cover wrapped around it and put it on the inside rather than, I was going to brace this with some cardboard and put it on the outside inside the box, but it's probably safer on the inside. If that breaks during shipment, I would just probably get some piece of Lexan or plexiglass and just glue it to the back or inside or whatever. I think that's it. Oh yeah, touched up just the black part. I was going to repaint the whole thing, but I only have gloss, and the gloss was kind of looking kind of tacky. So I put gloss on the back of, I put the felt along here to make that quieter too when you put it down. But the gloss on there looks kind of tacky, so I just used it to touch up the spots on the base there. Oh yeah, one thing I did do, I used a different glue. This is not so much for you who's getting this, but for other people that do the repair work, is on the pads on the key, on the leather pieces of leather that seal the keys, the hole. This time I used a craft foam glue rather than the super glue, because the super glue tends to dry pretty hard. And the craft foam glue is nice except for that any of the excess dries very sticky. So I'm not sure what I'd use probably in the future. But I mean, you're supposed to use contact cement, and if I had the whole thing was coming off, I obviously would use contact cement. But this one actually didn't have too many of the seals that were loose. They just needed to be cleaned up. And but I treated all the keys, like I said before, like in the other video, as far as the waxing the sides of them, adjusting all the tension and all that stuff. So I'll go ahead and I'll polish it one more time, the brass. It was all pretty nasty looking when I first got it. But otherwise it's a very good instrument.